The Liberty Revolt is founded on strategies to engage in culture war, to bring awareness to the threat of radical ideological subversion in the West, and to develop a better understanding of policy and its ramifications. To learn more about the Liberty Revolt, visit www.libertyrevoltmedia.com.
Hey, Larry Elder here. Thank you for listening to the Bucky Dillon Show, hosted by the Liberty Revolt and KHNC.
Good morning, KHNC. So great to be with you. Bucky Dillon here on another gorgeous, beautiful, wonderful morning right here in Northern Colorado. I hope you're tuning in. I hope you're hanging out with me. Call in at any time today during the first hour. The phone number, 970-587-5171. I would love to hear from you guys, especially and particularly Mr. Malsby. If you're out there, I just got to say, my wife is enjoying the book Confucius Never Said. For those who don't know, my wife is Chinese, and Malsby gave me a book called Confucius Never Said, and it's about one woman's upbringing and hearing kind of the stories of the communist revolution in China from her grandparents, and coming to the United States, and then seeing everything going on here, everything going on there, and kind of just sharing her thoughts on it throughout this book, Confucius Never Said. Now, this is a harsh condemnation of the Chinese Communist Party, particularly how they established their rule and went about doing so. But my wife started reading Confucius Never Said while she's at work. It's interesting because, unlike me, my wife actually has the ability to multitask. Good morning, Christy, by the way. Unlike me, my wife actually has the ability to multitask. So, she works from home doing customer service online, and she will have the TV on playing one of her favorite YouTube series things. And then she'll have her cell phone going. In the other hand, she'll be playing games and watching her favorite TV shows while simultaneously doing her work. And you would think, gosh, wouldn't that make you inefficient? But surprisingly, month after month after month after month after month, she is the most productive, and her employers are just celebrating her and giving her an incredible amount of respect and credit for the work that she does. I mean, she is an incredible woman. But she came to me last night and she says, this book, Confucius Never Said, there's a lot of things I disagree with. There's a lot of things I think is kind of BS. But if some of these things that I'm reading is true, it means that a lot of the education I received when I was, going to school in China, as far as history and the rise of the Communist Party, was a lie. 3 years of study and research was a lie. And she was telling me this. And, as the night went on, I didn't really know what to say because I hadn't read the book. All I could really say was that, I don't know what her school taught. And frankly, I can't say that I was there, that I know that I perfectly understand the real history, but I can say that when the government, the political establishment in power is in control of the education system, obviously they are going to assemble a curriculum that helps justify and maintain their power, right? So, that's all I can say about that. But she, throughout the course of the night, she just kept bringing up this book, Confucius Never Said, by Helen Raleigh. I don't know what her Chinese name is, but that's her English name. And she kept saying that she just was really conflicted in trying to wrap her head around what she was reading in this book and what she had grown up hearing. Neither of her parents were alive during the 50s and 60s when this was going on. But her grandparents were, but her grandfather died a long time ago, and her grandmother kind of suffers from some mental issues and hasn't been able to speak or communicate really for most of my wife's life. So she hasn't really heard the firsthand stories about that, but she was just reiterating over to me that I should actually read this book. People keep giving me books assuming that I'm an avid reader. I'm actually not. I have a hard time reading, guys. I like audiobooks. I like short reads, and I like videos. I like documentaries, stuff like that, and I like audiobooks. But when it comes to actually reading books, my goodness, I can't say that in my adult life I've ever read a book, like a book. I start reading, man, and my eyes start crossing, and I start falling out of my chair. Audiobooks, and I know the deal. When you actually read, you absorb the information a little bit more effectively. But that I like to write, and I like to listen to audiobooks, and so I will combine writing and listening to try to absorb information more effectively. So, the weather in Fort Collins today, for my local radio listeners, it's going to be better. Gosh, it's going to get to the 70s today. Finally, we've had rain for the last few days, even a little bit of snow. I think spring has finally sprung. So, today it is set to be sunny for the noon. It might get partly cloudy and stay cloudy, but it's still going to be 70s, and there's not a significant chance of rain or precipitation out there for you guys today. So hopefully that's good on this day in history. And this is going to be kind of the bulk of what I talk about during this first hour. There's a few things that happened, but let me tell you, the most important thing that happened, in my personal opinion, at least the thing that strikes me as what I would like to talk about today, happened in 1989. Let's see if you can guess what happened today in 1989 before the break's over. Let me know.
Reasons to own gold. Reason number 725.
The government goes out of its way to make you believe Social Security has an account with your name on it with money just for you. But the Supreme Court ruled that payments due under Social Security are not property rights and are not protected. Social Security is merely a tax, and the government is under no obligations to pay you anything. Call the Patriot Trading Group, 800-951-0592, or visit allamericangold.com.
KHNC listeners, this is Sam Shook, your Medicare license agent here in Northern Colorado. I want to thank you for your continued support and look forward to many more years serving you. I cannot stress enough, if you are getting into Medicare or have any Medicare needs, call me at 970-413-4939. If you have other insurance needs, such as life, dental, heart attack, cancer, and stroke, call me at 970-413-4939. Again, for Medicare needs, call me, Sam Shook, at 970-413-4939.
If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animated contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains be set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were ever our countrymen. Samuel Adams.
When a parent struggles with addiction or dies from a drug overdose, what happens to their children? Far too many end up in foster care, unable to ever return to their birth homes because it's simply not safe. The Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption is fighting the clock so that teens don't age out of foster care, leaving them at a higher risk of addiction and other negative outcomes that can happen to a child without the love and stability of a permanent family. Learn more at davethomasfoundation.org.
The Bucky Dillon Show is a Liberty Revolt Media production. www.libertyrevoltmedia.com.
www.libertyrevoltmedia.com. You can read the article content that myself and my co-patriot, the Everest Goose, write. We do a lot of our writing in preparation for the show. We haven't been doing as much writing recently. I've been pretty busy trying to keep up with just doing this show and other responsibilities here at the radio station. Guys, again, the call-in number 970-587-5171. I would absolutely love to hear from the KHNC audience. I don't know if you guys know this. I adore you guys. I absolutely love you guys. And it's always a pleasure to have you guys call in and join me in the conversation. Now, we had one person in the chat say Tiananmen Square. That would be correct. That is exactly what I was trying to talk about today. On this day, in 1989, approximately 2,000 students begin their hunger strike in Tiananmen Square, China, rallying for some form of democracy. So if you ask Chinese students today, they will often say that the atrocity that occurred there is being misrepresented by Western media, and it's not what happened, that we don't understand the truth, we should just shut up. It's none of our business. That's China's internal affairs. I was talking to one of my Chinese roommates some time back, and he said that what actually happened was that these students starved themselves and they started to go crazy and tried to rip firearms away from the Chinese soldiers, and they had no choice but to run them over with tanks. So that runs contrary to what a lot of other people have heard, and this is one of those things like ideological subversion that I think myself and my guests are going to get into in the second hour, that it's very difficult to get reliable and credible information out of a country that has strict borders and controls on internal media. Because if you're relying on internal media sources, then, obviously it's going to be tainted in the direction of the powers at play. And if you're trying to rely on just firsthand, witness testimony, that also has its fair share of problems. But obviously there are reports about it that we have access to, and so I'm going to read one of these reports from the History Channel, and I'd like to read a couple different reports with you guys, and then try to have a conversation with it. If you have intimate knowledge of the Tiananmen Square protests, go ahead, call in. The phone number 970-587-5171. 970-587-5171. You can join me on the radio broadcast and have a conversation with me. So, the Tiananmen Square protests were student-led demonstrations. This is according to the History Channel. Were student-led protests calling for democracy, free speech, and a free press in China. They were halted in a bloody crackdown known as the Tiananmen Square Massacre by the Chinese government on June 4th and 5th, 1989. Pro-democracy protesters, mostly students, initially marched through Beijing, the death of Hu Yaobang. Hu, a former Communist Party leader, had worked to introduce democratic reform in China. In Morning Hue, the students called for a more open democratic government. Eventually, thousands of people joined the students in Tiananmen Square, with the protests numbers increasing to the tens of thousands by mid-May. At issue was a frustration with the limits on political freedom in the country, given its one-party form of government, with the Communist Party holding sway and ongoing economic troubles. Although China's government had instituted a number of reforms in the 1980s that established a limited form of capitalism in the country, the poor and working-class Chinese still faced significant challenges, including lack of jobs and increased poverty. The students also argued that China's educational system did not adequately prepare them for an economic system with elements of a free market capitalism. Some leaders within China's government were sympathetic to the protesters' cause, while others saw them as a political threat. So on May 13th, a number of student protesters initiated a hunger strike, which inspired other similar strikes and protests all across China. As the movement grew, the Chinese government became increasingly uncomfortable with the protests, particularly as they disrupted a visit by Prime Minister Mikhail Gorbachev of the Soviet Union on May 15th. A welcome ceremony for Gorbachev, originally scheduled for Tiananmen Square, was instead held at the airport, although otherwise his visit passed without incident. Even so, feeling the demonstrations needed to be curtailed, the Chinese government declared martial law on May 20th, and 250,000 troops entered Beijing. By the end of May, more than 1 million protesters had gathered in Tiananmen Square. They held daily marches and vigils, and images of the events were transmitted by media organizations to audiences in the United States and Europe. This is when we get to the Chinese massacre, according to this press release. While the initial presence of the military failed to quell the protests, the Chinese authorities decided to increase their aggression at 1 a.m. on June 4th. Chinese soldiers and police stormed Tiananmen Square, firing live rounds into the crowd. Although thousands of protesters simply tried to escape, others fought back, stoning the attacking troops and setting fire to military vehicles. Reporters and Western diplomats there that day estimated that hundreds to thousands of protesters were killed in the Tiananmen Square massacre, and as many as 10,000 were arrested. Leaders worldwide, including Gorbachev, condemned the military action, and less than a month later, the United States Congress voted to impose economic sanctions against China, citing human rights violations. And then, of course, there's the famous image of a man standing in front of a row of tanks in the street. This is the image of the Tiananmen Square tank man. The image of an unidentified man standing alone in defiance and blocking a column of Chinese tanks on June 5th remains a lasting one for much of the world of the events. He is now renowned as the Tiananmen Square tank man. Tiananmen Square history. While the events of 1989 now dominate global coverage in Tiananmen Square, the site has long been an important crossroads within the city of Beijing. It was named for the nearby Tiananmen, or Gate of Heavenly Peace, and marks the entrance to the so-called Forbidden City. The location took on added significance as China shifted from an emperor-led political culture to one that was governed by the Communist Party. The Qing dynasty, in the last dynastic power to rule China, was the last dynastic power to rule China. It governed the country from the middle of the 1600s until 1912. The Xinhai Revolution in 1911 through 1912 resulted in the overthrow of the Qings and led to the establishment of the Republic of China. The early years of the Republic were marked by political turmoil, however, and the country fell under Japanese rule during the lead up to World War II. During the Japanese occupation, some 20 million Chinese were killed. As Japan faded in the aftermath of the Second World War, China entered a period of civil war. And at the end of that civil war in 1949, the Communist Party had gained control of most of mainland China. They established the People's Republic of China under the leadership of Chairman Mao Zedong. A celebration to honor the occasion was held in Tiananmen Square on October 1st, 1949, and more than 1 million Chinese attended. This celebration came to be known as National Day and is still observed annually on that date, with one of the largest events set in the square. Mao Zedong, considered the founding father of the People's Republic of China, is interred at Tiananmen Square in a mausoleum on the plaza. And then it goes on to talk about Tiananmen Square censorship, and I might jump into Mao Zedong himself and some of down during the war. You know, people really underestimate his military strategy brilliance, because he actually was, as far as military strategy goes, somewhat of a genius, and he accomplished some pretty incredible things, going around from village to village, from town to town, and recruiting and training soldiers and driving the nationalists ultimately out of China. They engaged in what was called the Long March. Really, really a fascinating piece of military history, and truly a testament to the fortitude and ingenuity of the Chinese people. I mean, I have to be totally fair. The Chinese people are very, very, very resilient and very intelligent. And man, throughout China's history, they have accomplished so many remarkable things that it is really unfair that in so many cases, when we look at historical events, we try to view it as kind of a black and white thing. They don't really do that in China. And I'm not necessarily advocating for this specific example that I'm about to mention, but as an example, in Chinese education, they actually revere Hitler, not because of the atrocities, very much in the same way that they view Mao Zedong, where you know, they respect leadership and are willing to overlook atrocity in pursuit of that leadership. And part of that is Chinese history being so rife with turmoil and oppression. Is that, you know, I hate to say that they're kind of numb to it, but they don't have the same outlook as say we free democratic society here in the West, you know, where we kind of take a lot of our freedoms in our democratic republic for granted, and our representative political system for granted. In China, over and over, when China has been ununified, they have been tyrannized by the neighbors. You know, like we just read about when Japan came and conquered China after they were kind of China's leadership had dissolved and decentralized to a bunch of essentially warlords. The Japanese were able to swoop in, and because there wasn't a very strong centralized government and centralized military in China, and Japan was very unified in their mission, for right or obviously for wrong, 20 million Chinese were killed, right? And then there was what happened when the Western powers kind of came in and kind of started bullying China. People don't realize that during the Vietnam War, we were actually against China. So there's a lot of history there that we take for granted, and I'm going to try to touch on that again when we come back from the break. You're listening to the Bucky Dillon Show right here, 1360 KHNC.
LibertyRevoltMedia.com is founded on strategies to engage in the culture war and to develop a better understanding of policy and its ramifications. Listen to KHNC every weekday from 5 to 7 a.m. to the Bucky Dillon Morning Show.
Hi, this is Bob Enyart, spokesman for Colorado and American Right to Life. Please fight to abolish abortion and resist all so-called pro-life efforts to regulate child killing. Regulations like late-term bans and waiting periods merely prune the abortion weed but strengthen its root, for they make abortion seem more acceptable to the public and to politicians. For more, check out americanrtl.org/regulations.
Do you need your fireplace clean? Not sure if your fireplace is working right or not sure if the fireplace is efficient? Call Abundant Flame at 970-966-0217 to schedule your appointment. We service all brands of gas fireplaces, freestanding and built-ins, pellet stoves, wood fireplaces. Visit us at Abundant-Flame or call 970-966-0217.
Hi, this is Mike Morris, owner of Warriors Revolution Tactical in Longmont. At Warriors Revolution, we have the largest selection of tactical gear and ammo in northern Colorado. But what many people may not know is that we now sell firearms. And even despite the recent run on firearms and ammunition, we have plenty of product in the store, including ARs, AKs, Glocks, SIGs, HK, and more. And don't forget all the bulk ammunition at the best prices in town. Need to do a private firearms transfer? We can do that too. I am a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, and our team is made up of veterans and security experts, not a bunch of salesmen. Our team is trained and fought with much of the actual equipment we sell. And one thing you should know is that we support the foundations and principles this great country was founded upon. So if you need tactical gear, ammo, firearms, AR parts or upgrades, and even survival accessories, stop by and visit us on Ken Pratt Boulevard and Bowen Street in Longmont, or visit warriorsrevolution.com. That's warriorsrevolution.com.
Kids, when making those cool motorcycle sounds when riding your bikes, don't use your baseball or even your Pokemon cards because they may be worth money someday. Instead, use that embarrassing baby picture that your mom took of you in that ridiculous outfit. But when she finds out, you didn't hear that from us. Another friendly reminder from 1360 KHNC, the roar of the Rockies. Always wear your helmet.
This is David Knight. Join me as we analyze the globalist next move. Tune in every weekday morning from 9 to 10. KHNC AM 1360.
Great minds think alike. Thank you for listening to the Bucky Dillon Show, hosted by the Liberty Revolt. Join me, Larry Elder, today at 5 on 1360 KHNC. Now back to Bucky Dillon.
Hey guys, I am going to play a short clip for you, kind of talking about the Long March. We are having an issue with the computer here that I need to get resolved, and I have no help. So in the meantime, I'm going to try to play a clip for you guys. If you guys are watching on the live stream, you will not be able to hear this clip. So let me just play something for you. If you are listening on the live stream, again, you probably won't be able to hear this, but if you're listening on the radio broadcast, you certainly will. So let me see if I can find a video of a Long March. Here we go. I'm going to cue this right now.
leaders were the warlords, the local generals. The nationalists and communists allied and won with joint efforts, led by Chiang Kai-shek. But Chiang Kai-shek did not trust the Red comrades because they wanted a different China. Thousands of communists were executed. The survivors ran south, where a new Soviet republic was being founded. The leader was Mao Zedong, the learning years of a dictator.
He used to be a farmer as well. He spoke our language, knew our mentality, knew our character. He was very talented and moved the farmers very well.
Summer 1934, nationalists encircled Mao's troops, but they managed to break out. The Long March began. Summer 1937, Japan attacked China. The common enemy eliminated internal conflict. After 1945, the slaughter continued. The nationalists and communists kept on fighting for power. Mao was supported by most of the Chinese people. His enemies were supported by the U.S. In the beginning of 1949, the Chiang Kai-shek government moved to Taiwan. The fight for China was over. The Long March achieved its goal. Mao won. Peking, Square of Heavenly Peace, 1st of October 1949, Mao proclaimed the Chinese People's Republic. Mao wanted to make communists out of all Chinese. The continuous revolution became a state doctrine. First step, agrarian reform. The fields of richer farmers were taken away, a lot of them even killed. Their property was divided among 120 million poorer farmers. 1957, experiment with intellectuals. With the motto of "Let 100 flowers blossom," the party president called upon critics. Critics arrived. Mao struck back.
In those times, in 1957, there were only about 5 million white-collar workers in China. Mao condemned about 500,000 of them as illegal anti-revolutionist. For example, I was deported to Chinese Siberia.
Mao was almighty. The propaganda simply called him the Red Sun. In 1958, he ordered the big jump forward from socialism to communism.
We made a huge and very important step, a step which none of our ancestors could do.
Mao's motto, "Down with the Soviet model." Chinese people had to build their country with their own hands. Heavy industry was ignored. The big jump forward turned out to be a step backwards. In the beginning of the 60s, China's economy was almost bankrupt. The famine killed 30 million people. It was Mao's fault. They tried to explain it.
The idea was good, but they did it all wrong. That's why a lot of his own people didn't follow him. For that, they were condemned as capitalists. Oh, and the whole country was great chaos. Nothing moved. Everything was stagnating.
But Mao prepared the next revolution, the Cultural Revolution. Youth as Red Guards. Mao's children, his fanatic political army, the Mao cult, came to a head. When I had to film Mao first, I couldn't sleep of the excitement the night before. I would see the man who I had always loved, the biggest man of my heart.
So that, by the way, guys, I just reset the Skylar computer, so we are good to go. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for being patient with me. I'll jump into the Chinese education system and the ramifications of tea in the square after the break.
KHNC listeners, this is Sam Shook, your Medicare licensed agent here in Northern Colorado. I want to thank you for your continued support and look forward to many more years serving you. I cannot stress enough, if you are getting into Medicare or have any Medicare needs, call me at 970-413-4939. If you have other insurance needs, such as life, dental, heart attack, cancer, and stroke, call me at 970-413-4939. Again, for Medicare needs, call me, Sam Shook, at 970-413-4939.
Hi, folks. I'm James Morgan, a realtor with Grisham and Associates, LLC. I know it must seem like there's a million realtors out there making all kinds of promises. Want to hear my big marketing promise? I promise honest and fair dealings with all those I do business with. That may sound old-fashioned, and it is not very catchy, but it is true. I am your Colorado real estate specialist. Farm, land, mountain cabins, or urban dwellings. When you work with my team, we'll get the right property for you and be upfront and honest with you every step of the way. Over the years, my clients have told me just that fact alone separates us from others in the industry. If you are considering buying or selling real estate, call me, James Morgan, at 720-203-0731 or visit my website at coloradoproperties.online. No catchy slogan, just a client-first, honest real estate experience. Hit it, girls.
Keep listening to the American Freedom Network.
Hi, folks. Larry Elder here. Thanks for listening to my show each weekday from 5 to 8 p.m. Have you heard how much KHNC, the Roar of the Rockies, has grown? A new lineup, big signal, and a rapidly growing audience. If you own a business and would like to reach a conservative, patriotic, Northern Colorado audience in a very affordable way, contact my friends at KHNC 970-5875. Email them at ontheair@khnc.net and tell them Larry sent you.
欢迎收听 KHNC 广播电台 Bucky Dillon 早安秀，大家的早安广播，谢谢。
Beer for Bears, ladies and gentlemen. That is my personal band. So if you want to do me a huge favor, go to facebook.com/beerforbears. Unlike us, unfollow, unsubscribe, don't hit the bell, don't get the notifications, don't leave a comment. Please dox us on Antifa blog forums. It really does help our competitors. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. And I want to break down some of the interesting aspects of the Chinese education system. But before I go to our caller, which we do have a caller on the air, by the way, before I get to our caller, I just want to finish that thought I was saying where why do the Chinese still revere Mao Zedong regardless of the atrocities committed? Why do they revere Hitler regardless of the atrocities committed? Because you and I'm not trying to leverage a defense of that mindset, but I feel this is kind of how they teach it in China. They view strong leadership because throughout China's history, the worst atrocities that have been committed against the Chinese have always come from their centralized government becoming fragmented into small, decentralized warring factions, and then outside forces invading and tyrannizing the population. And so they are willing to overlook, say, a censored media, say the oppression of religion. They're willing to overlook certain atrocities if they think it is in service of unifying China under centralized and powerful and ultra efficient leadership, because unlike us here in the U.S., where you walk down the street and you ask someone what is the biggest threat to America, to America's economy, to American freedom, to America's democracy, and they will say it's the Democrats or it's the Republicans. We're very America centric. We're very inward looking. We're very selfish and kind of introspective in the way we look at we look at the world. Well, that's kind of a privilege of being the dominant power and the world's #1 exporter of culture. We see our culture. We don't import culture from other countries nearly as much as the rest of the world, which, like I said, culture is the United States is #1 export. So the rest of the world, they grow up watching our movies, going to our higher education, schooling, listening to our music, and looking up, and they really see the United States, whereas we don't really see them, and it's hard for us to understand. On the phone with me, on the air, I have a friend of mine, an audience member who called in, who wants to share a bit of his story and some of his perspective. So, caller, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us what's on your mind?
Okay, thanks, Bucky. My name is Brian, and sometimes people don't give their last name on the radio, but I don't care. My last name is Poe, and I'm not Brian, the guy that works at KHNC. I'm Brian, a listener. I've been listening a long time. I was on Taiwan as a young U.S. Air Force enlisted man from October 1963 to just before Christmas 1964, so a little over a year. I turned 21 over there, and I didn't know a lot. My feeling at the time, and I worked for, it was kind of interesting, I worked for what's called the U.S. Air Force Security Service, and we were kind of a group, pretty large organization in the Air Force that collected intelligence information, radio communications, for the National Security Agency and the Defense Intelligence Agency. So information on what Communist China was doing as far as their military. Like we would listen to communications between fighter pilots and ground controllers, and then other stuff going on too. So had access to a little bit, but mostly I was just kind of a uninformed enlisted person. But I think kind of the general feeling that I got, whether or not it was accurate, was that the Taiwanese, I'll step back a second. Chiang Kai-shek, I'm pretty sure he was still alive there at that time. I'm not sure. If he had passed, it wasn't very previous to that. So, and his wife was definitely still alive. But anyway, they maintained, and government kind of personnel for the nationalists maintained these government entities for each of the provinces on the mainland, even though, they were in exile. And I think that there are several hundred provinces. That's my recollection from back then. I think it's accurate. But so anyway, I had this huge bureaucracy, and also it was kind of felt that the Taiwanese people, not the Chinese, but the Taiwanese who'd been on Taiwan for centuries, if not longer, probably longer than that, really, were, and again, as you mentioned earlier, Japan took over, and you filled in a lot of stuff I didn't know. It was good. Japan took over not only mainland China, but Taiwan as well. And then the Western Allies won World War II, and Japan was defeated. And so the U.S. very much came in to Taiwan and kind of occupied that. But it was felt when I was there in 63, 64, that the Taiwanese people really respected the Japanese more than they did the nationalists who they had to deal with, because they had basically fled in exile from the mainland over to Taiwan. So there's that. One thing about respect for Hitler and Mao Zedong.
Hang on, we're going to break. But Brian, please stay on the air. People are really enjoying this.
Okay, good.
Guys, you're listening to the Bucky Dillon Show. I believe we have one final segment coming up, so stick around.
The Patriot Trading Group is a different kind of gold and silver company, cleaning up the industry for 21 years. Are you tired of the high-pressured sales tactics, the constant phone calls? Are you done with the bait and switch? You just want to be treated fairly with honesty and respect? That's exactly what you get when you call 800-951-0592. You have my word on it. I'm Joe Jaquin, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group. Check us out online at allamericangold.com.
Do you own an annuity, either fixed rate, indexed, or variable? Are you paying high fees and getting low returns? If so, Annuity General would like you to have this free book to learn the pitfalls and mistakes of buying an annuity. The Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers contains the little-known truths about annuities, like how to help reduce your fees and increase retirement income. And it's free. That's right. As a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report just for calling. We researched over 1,000 annuities and summarized rates and benefits from financially strong insurers. You get Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers and the Annuity Rate Report, both absolutely free for calling Annuity General today. Hurry, supplies are limited. Call now.
800-760-1845. 800-760-1845. 800-760-1845. That's 800-760-1845.
Hello, Northern Colorado. My name is Travis, and I want to introduce you to Meat America. Meat America is a company that provides local families with the best locally raised dry-aged beef available. We can be reached at 970-759-9217, or you can email us at meetamericainc@gmail.com. Think local, eat local, stay local. meetamericainc@gmail.com.
The Liberty Revolt is supported by viewers like you. Consider making a donation via Venmo at Liberty Revolt Media or going to the website, libertyrevoltmedia.com, and hitting the donation button. It really does keep us in the fight. Thank you.
You heard it right here, guys. A shameless plug. Just really dropping my head and begging for financial support from our audience. I think that's funny. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to let Brian give us his final thoughts here. Brian, please try to wrap it up in about 2 minutes. And then I'll send us out with a plug for the website and an introduction into what we're going to be talking about on the second hour. I do have a guest in studio. So, Brian, final thoughts, 2 minutes.
Okay, Bucky. So one thing, as far as Chinese respecting Mao Zedong, however, that's the way we used to pronounce it. But anyway, and Hitler. Now, I know that Hitler is considered to have been, had some interesting, well, obviously he was hugely charismatic, so you got to respect that. And some people say he had some interesting ideas. But that doesn't mean that, I ignore all the concentration camps and all that stuff. Same way with Mao Zedong, that, he obviously was a great strategist, but again, there's a lot of people that are dead. And unfortunately, here in the U.S., same thing is going on here. We're fed all kinds of bull crap about, Spanish-American War, 1898. It's supposed to have started with a ship in the Havana Harbor, a U.S. ship being blown up. And so supposedly the Cubans or Spanish did that, again, 1898. But really, it was blown up by U.S. Forces in order to start the war because they wanted a war with Spain. So stuff like that. America's kind of, governments are hard to deal with. China, millennia. They're not just centuries. They're thousands of years.
That's
There's
right.
amazing stuff that's come out of China. So that's all I got
Incredible.
to say.
There's seriously incredible stuff. I just did an episode on cannabis the other day, and the first documented use of cannabis as a medicine came from China, and so many other things. From paper money came from China. Fireworks, gunpowder came from China.
Acupuncture.
Acupuncture, the compass, rockets. There's actually tons and tons of things. Row farming, tons and tons of silk. Gosh, I mean, so many things came from innovations in China. They really are an incredible country. And one example I like to use to show people just how resilient and innovative Chinese people can be. When Japan invaded China, they literally entire cities retreated, and during the retreat, they pulled up every rail. They pulled apart every building and took it with them by cart and donkey across the country, and reassembled all of this infrastructure into factories to help with the war effort and drive the Japanese back successfully. And it just really is incredible. I imagine if, our city were to retreat and pull with us every building and every railroad and everything on the way out, it is incredible. And it's interesting to think that the Chinese are willing to overlook the atrocities, or at least weigh those atrocities against the notion that Hitler was able to bring a crumbled and humiliated Germany up from the ashes and turn it into a global threat to the power hierarchy of the world within a couple decades. It's a nuanced view. There's no excuse for the tragedy, but it really is interesting. Hey, thanks for calling. Second hour coming up, guys. Thanks for hanging out. A new initiative known as the Pause Act, written by radical left-wing extremists, is gaining traction to be put on your Colorado ballot. Initiative 16 is cleverly worded to manipulate urban voters unfamiliar